Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really cutting through the noise on a topic that causes so much frustration for so many people. I'm talking about metabolism and weight control.
It's a huge one. And when you look at the sources you sent over, the global stats are just, well, they're striking.
They really are. We're now living in a world where there are more than twice as many people who are overweight as there are malnourished.
Right. We've sort of solved one major crisis, but in the process, we've stumbled right into another one. And this new one, obesity, is so tightly linked to chronic disease and, just a lower quality of life down the road.
So that's the big question, right? It's the one our listeners are always asking. Why does all the standard advice seem to fail so many of us? We're all counting calories, so why are the results so wildly different from person to person?
Because we have to start by just throwing out that old story, the whole calories in, calories out equation.
The simple math.
The simple math. It's tidy, I get it, but it's biologically just bankrupt. If it were true, every single person eating the exact same diet and doing the exact same exercise would get the exact same result. And we know that's not what happens.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who started a diet with a friend knows that feeling. You're doing the same work, but you're watching them succeed while you're just stuck.
And that difference, that key variable, is your metabolism.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's what's controlling your metabolism. And that is your unique hormonal pattern.
Okay, hormones.
Think about the classic example. You've got a teenager, hormones just raging. They can eat 2 entire pizzas and not gain a single pound.
Right.
Then you have someone, say, in perimenopause, who feels like they gained 5 pounds just by looking at a piece of bread. The difference isn't willpower, it's the endocrine system.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Let's make this actionable. We want to get past that general I'm stuck feeling and really understand not just if we're gaining weight, but where. Because that location, that specific spot,
That's the clue.
that's the clue that tells us which hormone is out of balance.
Exactly. The location is a roadmap your body is giving you. Hormones don't just set the speed of your metabolism. They meticulously dictate where the fat is going to be stored.
How does that actually work, though, on a chemical level? How does a hormone like estrogen decide to put fat on the thighs, but insulin puts it right on the stomach?
It all comes down to receptors. Think of them like little docking stations. Each hormone has an affinity for specific sites in the body where its receptors are most concentrated.
So it's like real estate. Location, location, location.
Precisely. If your hips, for example, are packed with estrogen receptors and your body is in a state of storing energy, that's where the fat is going to go. Estrogen will signal those specific cells to get bigger. And understanding this it changes the whole game. The strategy has to be personal.
So generic plan is like what? Using a sledgehammer to fix a watch?
That's a perfect analogy. And your sources lay this out really well with some contrasting examples. For someone with, say, major insulin resistance.
So high blood sugar, overweight.
Right. For that person, intermittent fasting can be a game changer. It works wonders because it dramatically lowers the amount of insulin circulating in their blood.
But if you take that same exact fasting strategy and give it to someone with a serious thyroid problem like marked hypothyroidism, all those hours of fasting could actually make things worse.
It could absolutely worsen it.
Right.
It would stress their system, slow their metabolism even further, and you could ironically end up with more fat accumulation.
So the goal is to fix the signal, not just fight the fat.
You've got it. So let's dive into the 5 big hormonal patterns your sources highlight and see how they map onto the body.
Okay, let's start with the most common one globally. Insulin. What's driving the imbalance and where does it send the fat?
Insulin problems are almost always the result of years of eating too many processed foods and simple carbs. Every time you get a big blood sugar spike, your pancreas just pumps out tons of insulin to deal with it.
And over time, the body just gets tired of listening.
It gets tired of listening. The cells become resistant. You need more and more insulin to do the same job of lowering blood sugar. That state is what we call insulin resistance.
And if you have high insulin floating around all the time, does that mean the fat you already have is basically locked away? That sounds incredibly frustrating.
That is the absolute crux of the problem. High insulin doesn't just encourage your body to store new fat. It is an anti-fat burning hormone. It literally stops your body from using its own fat reserves for energy.
Wow. So where does it put that new fat?
Almost exclusively the abdomen. We're talking about that visceral fat, the dangerous stuff around the organs. You see very little accumulation on the arms or legs in comparison. If you have that classic apple shape, Insulin should be your #1 suspect.
Okay, so that's the apple. Let's shift to a different profile, the one people often associate with female physiology, but it's relevant for everyone. Estrogens.
Right. Estrogens, especially one called estradiol, or E2, and
Hmm.
also progesterone, they regulate cycles and fertility. So their accumulation sites are where the receptors are densest.
Which would be?
The breasts, thighs, buttocks, and the outer part of the hips, the classic pear shape.
It's so interesting how that pattern shows up throughout history. You see figures like the Paleolithic Venus of Willendorf, and it's that same exaggerated pattern. It's clearly a deep biological signal.
It's a fundamental signature of fertility,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. And when you see that marked accumulation in the thighs and hips, it's often a sign of imbalance, specifically high estradiol and low progesterone.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really tricky. A vicious cycle starts.
Okay.
The more body fat you have, the more your body produces an enzyme called aromatase.
Aromatase. That sounds a little terrifying. What does it do?
Aromatase lives in your fat tissue, and its main job is to take testosterone in both men and women and convert it directly into estrogen,
Oh, no. So more fat means more aromatase.
which means more of your testosterone gets turned into estrogen.
Ah.
And that higher estrogen then stimulates more fat storage in those same estrogen-sensitive areas. The cycle just fuels itself.
So more fat means less T and more E, which then tells the body to make even more fat. How do you break that cycle?
Well, beyond the obvious diet changes like lowering your sugar intake, you have to target that excess E2. The strategy is to stimulate a process called methylation.
Methylation. So what is that? Like a detox process?
You can think of it that way, yeah. It's the body's packaging system. It takes potent, active estrogens like E2 and transforms them into weaker forms that are much easier for your body to get rid of.
Got it. And how do we actually encourage that to happen?
You can stimulate methylation by consuming a substance called DIM, which stands for diindolyl methane. It's naturally found in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, but to get a really therapeutic dose, many people turn to supplementation.
Okay, that makes sense. Which brings us to hormone number 3, cortisol. The stress hormone. It seems like everyone's is high these days.
It really does. I mean, cortisol is supposed to spike in the morning to wake us up and then drop off. But our modern lives, with the chronic low-grade stress.
Financial worries, work anxiety.
Exactly. It keeps cortisol elevated pretty much all day long. And since we're not physically running from a lion, that hormone just stays high and starts messing with how our body handles sugar.
And the fat storage pattern for cortisol is really unique. It's not the apple or the pear.
No, it's very specific. High cortisol tends to store fat around the oblique muscles, so the flanks or love handles, the lower back, and even the neck and cervical area.
In extreme cases, don't you also see it in the face?
You do. In clinical cases like Cushing's syndrome, you get what's called moon face, where fat accumulates in the face. It's a very clear sign.
So what's the strategy here? I mean, besides the obvious, eliminate all stress from your life.
Haha, right, if only. Well, biochemically, certain adaptogenic herbs like rhodiola can help balance the body's response. But what the sources really emphasize is the timing of exercise.
The timing.
Yes. Engage in physical exercise after a stressful event. It gives that circulating cortisol a physical outlet. You basically burn it off, which helps your levels come back down to normal.
That is a great tip. Okay, let's move on to the master regulator, the thyroid. I imagine this one is a little different since it affects literally everything.
That's right. Thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, are critical because nearly every single cell in your body has a receptor for them. So when your thyroid is sluggish, your whole metabolic speed just slows way down.
So since it affects every cell, where does the fat actually go? Does it have a preferred spot?
Not really. The accumulation is homogeneous, meaning it's kind of everywhere, all over. However, it is very common, especially for women, to have thyroid problems and high estrogen at the same time.
Ah, so you get a combination platter.
You get a combo. Homogeneous, all over accumulation, plus that extra storage in the thighs and hips from the estrogen.
And your sources mentioned you can spot early signs of trouble even when the main lab value, TSH, is still technically in range.
Yes. TSH is the signal from your brain telling your thyroid to work. If that number starts creeping up, say over 3.0, it means your brain is having to shout to get your thyroid's attention. That's an early warning sign, even before a doctor might flag it.
And what are the symptoms that go with that?
Things like low energy, maybe some hair loss, constantly cold hands and feet, and just gaining weight for no apparent reason.
So what's the nutritional strategy for supporting the thyroid?
You need the building blocks, things like algae or seaweed for iodine, which is the core of the T4 hormone. You also need an amino acid called tyrosine and Crucially, the mineral selenium. Selenium is what helps convert the inactive T4 hormone into the active T3 that your cells can actually use.
A quick question on that. You mentioned cruciferous vegetables for estrogen. I've heard they can interfere with thyroid function. Is that a real concern?
That is a great clarifying question. For most people, it's not an issue. The sources are clear that you would have to eat huge amounts, we're talking over a kilogram a day, for it to cause a real problem with iodine uptake. The estrogen balancing benefits usually far outweigh that tiny risk.
Okay, good to know. So finally, let's talk about a hormone that's getting a lot more attention lately for metabolic dysfunction, testosterone. Low levels seem to be everywhere.
It's becoming a true epidemic, and it's fueled by our modern lifestyle. Sedentary habits, high-carb diets, chronic stress. But keeping your levels healthy is just profoundly protective for your health.
Protective how?
It helps your mood, protects your heart and brain, helps you maintain muscle mass, and it naturally keeps your body fat lower.
So if I'm hearing you right, the modern Western lifestyle is actively driving down testosterone levels across the whole population.
Absolutely. The main culprits are high insulin and high abdominal fat,
Yeah.
which, as we just talked about, fires up that aromatase enzyme that steals your testosterone and turns it into estrogen.
So where does low T store fat? Is it another whole body situation?
It is often whole body, like
Mm-hmm.
with the thyroid, but the key difference is that it's almost always associated with a significant loss of muscle mass. When you naturally increase T levels, people often lose fat even without changing their diet, simply because they're building more metabolically active muscle.
So what's the strategy? Besides getting insulin under control, what are the direct ways to boost testosterone?
Strength training is number one. It's non-negotiable. Lifting heavy things is a powerful signal. Moderate intermittent fasting, say 16 hours, helps a lot by controlling insulin. And then you have to avoid deficiencies in key nutrients like magnesium, vitamin D, boron, and zinc.
Okay, we've covered 5 big hormonal players, and the thread I'm seeing is that it's almost never just one single thing going wrong.
That's the reality. It's almost always a combination. You'll see high insulin with high estrogen, or low thyroid with low testosterone. If you're seeing fat in multiple places, you have multiple signals firing. The key is not to get overwhelmed.
So where do you start?
Start with the one that seems easiest to fix,
Yeah.
or the one that is most obviously out of balance. It's so much more efficient to fix the real hormonal problem than to just try and brute force it with more exercise or less food. That just leads to burnout.
Which brings us back to that one core truth, the one that debunks so many fitness fads. We don't get to choose where we burn fat. The body chooses for us.
Exactly. And that means spot reduction is a myth. 1,000 crunches will not get rid of abdominal fat if high insulin is keeping it locked down. Side leg lifts won't touch thigh fat if high estrogen is the root cause. You have to fix the hormonal tendency first. Once that's balanced, the body will let the fat go from those spots.
This whole deep dive really shifts the focus. It's not about restriction. It's about creating a personalized endocrine strategy. Food, exercise, stress, they all become tools.
They become targeted hormonal medicine. And if you want a final thought to really chew on, think about how interconnected all of this is. Think about how insulin, estrogen, and testosterone are all linked by that one enzyme, aromatase, that lives in your fat tissue.
The feedback loop.
It's the ultimate feedback loop.
Yeah.
The body's ability to turn testosterone into estrogen based purely on how much fat you're carrying. I mean, it's an elegantly frustrating mechanism. It means your current body composition is actively shaping your future hormonal destiny. Understanding that link, that's the first real step toward taking back control.